And I would like, please, if you could all join me in welcoming my very, very dear friend, Emma Watson. Hello. Do you want to hear?
Yeah.
All right. Fantastic.
Oh,
There you go.
you kill me.
That's it. Best kiss. Fantastic. Fantastic.
Best kiss. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Ah,
It's so
this is
strange.
amazing. It's so strange because, as Steve says, we've been going for dinner together now for 10 years.
Yes.
And Steve, he's too humble to say this, but he's not just my friend. He's really my mentor. And yeah, he's family really. So anyway, it's lovely to do this with an audience for once. He has such great things to say, and everyone should hear them. So
Well, thank you. No pressure.
The best advice. I'm obviously biased because I like you, as we know, but I was honestly obsessed with your book. I think I told you this when I first called you after I read it, but I read it in 2 sittings, which, considering if you've seen how thick the book is, this is a really big deal. It means I didn't move for a very long time and just read his book. It has all this wisdom in it, but it's entertaining. It's, as I said, it's the bran and the donut.
Yes.
It's spiritual enlightenment and horror, which are 2 concepts I never expected to be so successfully melded together. I know you often think filmically, having worked with you on Perks of Being a Wallflower, which was an amazing film and a book. Can you give us the trailer of your book? What would the trailer look like for Imaginary Child? You're going to act, just to really put you on the spot.
I think
you're going to act it out right now.
Yes. Well, it depends, because not the sequel, because I've told you about the sequel.
You have told me about
that's the child one. For this one, Imaginary Friend, I would say this. It would be that moment when Christopher is outside of his school and he's all alone, and there is the cloud face up in the heavens. And it's like when the last of the school buses go away, it's just him alone talking to that cloud. I think that, like a nice little 20-second scary little trailer, like what does that mean? What's behind that cloud? Because that cloud represented everything to me.
Right.
And following the cloud was the kind of the metaphor for the last 10 years of writing this book. So I would pick that moment.
So that was really going to be my next question was, so you had this vision came to you of the boy speaking to the cloud. Mm-hmm. And then I'm curious, did you kind of have the whole story panned out and then you just kind of had to write it? Or were different big pieces of the story revealed to you as you
I think big pieces of the story were revealed to me as I went. I knew some basic things. And I know that you know that I know some basic things because this is a kind of a fun moment where you and I are on the set of The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and we were at lunch when we were shooting the Secret Santa thing, and it was just me and you, and I was just like, and I told you the story, and then the boy in the cloud, and then the woods, and then he goes missing and all these things, and you were on the edge of your seat. It was a fantastic moment. And then at the end I go, and then this happened, and you were like, huh. You know what I mean? It was...
People think that being an actress is about being a good liar. It's actually the opposite. What it means is that all of your emotions play across the whole of your face and body.
This is true.
And you can hide nothing about the way that you feel.
Yes, that is absolutely true.
It's true.
You're a very bad liar.
I was a terrible liar. You told me the ending and I couldn't conceal my...
You couldn't.
I was like, it was so good, and then it was bad.
Yeah.
It was so good.
There you go. Thank you very much. There you go. So, welcome to dinner.
Not bad.
Yes, that was... But that was a really important moment because obviously I trust your taste, and you're brilliant. And so you knew... So going back to your question is, you knew a lot of it already, but a lot of it was real surprise. I didn't think it would be as long as it was.
Right.
But it kept demanding to be this length. It kept demanding to be an epic and multi-point, multi-perspectives. And so, I knew a lot of it. I knew a couple of the twists along the way, but a lot of it was real surprise. Yeah. You would set up a thing where, in the beginning, for example, the prologue, David Olson is this character and he goes missing in the woods. I only wrote that part. This will kind of be shocking to you. I only wrote that part because I just wanted to establish the kind of scary tone, because nothing scary happens for a long time. It's really about the heart. So I just added that, and then he became such a huge presence throughout the whole book. Wow. So sometimes you just follow, sometimes you just follow the clues.
Device that then became this
thing, and so many thematic layers about loss, about you know, I had the idea for this one character, Mary Catherine, and she started off as one way and then evolved into something else. So yeah, a lot of it was surprising to me.
Amazing. Because I know you so well, I know that being a great husband is really important to you. Being a good father is really important to you. You have 2 children. You've directed a film in the meantime. I'm just curious what the daily rigor of actually getting a project of this magnitude done and complete. What does the discipline look like to actually to do that?
Well, yeah. Well, no, that's a great question. You know, it's funny, when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I used to wait for inspiration, right? and now it's kind of like flipped, like inspiration waits for me. Do you know what I'm saying? Because what I've learned is when you're a young artist, you're like waiting for that like lightning bolt. And now that I'm older and like, you know, Liz and I, like we have, you know, with our kids, it's like, you know, you got to take Theo to school. You got to take Theo to school. If you only have 3 hours that day, well, guess what? That's what you have. What I found, though, is by just simply committing to the time. When I have time, I give it as much as I can. That and a lot of coffee, you know, and you know, that and a lot of coffee in 10 years can equal, you know, a book.
Okay, so amazing.
You know, let's not leave out the 10 years part.
This is incredible. So you're not one of these writers that's like, I have to write between 4 in the morning and 8, and then I have to have this very specific type of croissant, and then, do you know what I mean? It's not that.
Yeah,
it's like...
absolutely. First of all, I haven't had a croissant in a long time. Secondly, it's like, listen, you know, it's funny. I was thinking about when we were right down the road here on Sunset Boulevard for the Perks premiere at the Cinerama Dome, right? So we're right down the road. And like, you were off, and then I went home that night and I changed diapers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the glamour of it. Yes, it used to be like there was a ritual, and this had to happen, and this had to happen. And now it's like, nah, you know what I mean? You just do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's not. But like, tomorrow will tell you how good today is.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
This is what I mean. He just drops things, and you're like, that's so great. Okay, amazing. All right, so you had this, I was going to say, of all the things you could have written, why did you write this? But it sounds as though the inspiration guided you, in the sense that you weren't like, I want to write a book about this kind of message. It was like, this idea just captured your
It was the idea.
imagination.
It's like the idea of the boy looking at that cloud. And I was like, something's behind that cloud. It's evocative of something he's been through. I started thinking about the boy and his friends. I started thinking about my childhood in Pittsburgh. And little by little, bit by bit, these moments happened that were just, they were really, they just inspired me. And you kind of go down a rabbit hole. But my deal with myself and with the reader was this, is, you know, I hadn't written a book, I hadn't published a book in 20 years. So for me, I was like, I was going to give it the best I had.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't going to stop until I thought I was really, really up to par with The Perks of Being a Wallflower, because I couldn't let down those fans. I mean, over the years, it's kind of remarkable, all the love that, I mean, the letters and the just meeting people. So it was like, you know, that was my thing.
Well, you did it. Your book is a New York Times bestseller right now, and it's...
Thank you.
So clearly you achieved that goal. Small spoiler, Christopher recounts in the book the time that he saw The Shining, and, and you cite Stephen King as an inspiration.
I did.
So I had to ask you, do you think there's lots of similarities between Danny Torrance and Christopher?
I never thought Danny Torrance and Christopher, because Danny was born with The Shining, and what happens to Christopher in the woods, like when he comes out a little bit different, he was changed in those woods. Okay. So it's slightly different. But I will say that in terms of Stephen King, which is very exciting, and I was really moved that his son, the brilliant Joe Hill, I love The Fireman. A little plug there for you, Joe. That when he gave me a nice blurb for the book, it really meant a lot to me. It's just, Stephen King is such an inspiration. You know, when I was a kid, I don't know if I've ever even told you the story. When I was 12, I've only wanted to be 2 things in my life. I wanted to be a baseball player. I wanted to be a writer. So I said to my dad, you know, when I gave up baseball at 11, I was like, that's not going to happen. I said, you know, Dad, I want to be a writer. What I meant to say was novelist, but I said writer. And he gave me this advice. He said, well, great writers are great readers. And then he kind of like left the room to like smoke a cigarette and watch the hockey game. Because that's what he did. And I was like, huh. And it was good advice. He was trying to encourage me to read more, but I didn't take it that way. I took it as a rule. I said, I guess I can't be a novelist because I wasn't a great reader. I watched a lot of movies. So I said, well, I read movies. All right, I guess I'll write movies. Because I just applied the logic of the rules to like this.
This is why what you tell children is such a huge deal, because you'll take it literal.
Yes. Well, you don't be too sad, because I ended up being pretty good at it.
Yeah, no, it turned out pretty well.
And, yeah,
it turned out good.
You were good in the movie, and yeah, life is great. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's all fine.
Okay.
But no, the point being though is that when he gave me that advice, the only person I really read at that age, because I don't think I was ever diagnosed. I was never diagnosed as dyslexic or whatever, but I'm a really slow reader, painfully slow, and at that age, the only person that really kind of got me, or that I got, was Stephen King. He's what I read.
Right.
So it was like, it went from like Dr. Seuss, and then I skipped a lot to Stephen King. And so this book, Imaginary Friend, was very much a tribute to him and his influence. I love his stuff. And also, it's ironic, I was just in London, as you know, because I saw you there. We saw the Tina Turner musical, which was
great, by the way.
It was quite good.
It was really
quite great. But we... I went to the Stanley Kubrick the next day. I went to the Stanley Kubrick archives, and I held the Shining screenplay in my hand, which was pretty remarkable.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was neat.
Just to move in a completely different direction now, the book deals with these kind of existential questions, life after death, and it deals with the religion a lot. And I know a little bit about your growing up, but do you come from a religious background? How did this form so much of the backbone?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, my thing is basically I was raised in Western Pennsylvania, a southern suburb of Pittsburgh called Upper St. Clair. And my thing about growing up in Pittsburgh is I was basically surrounded by three things, all of which are in the book: woods, deer, and Catholics. You mean like those are the? That's
These
it.
That's the foundations of
basically
your
the working title of Imaginary Friend was wood, deer, and Catholics.
Yeah.
And I am the latter. I was raised Catholic. And, it really, when you give a kid like me that's pretty literal, with a lot of imagination, and you tell that 7-year-old, okay, so by the way, and then God's going to flood the world, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It scared me to death. Because I took it quite literally, and it really scared me. And so a lot of those questions, a lot of that imagery is in the book. It's kind of a mixture of everything that scared me as a kid in a lot of ways, whether it was, Hansel and Gretel, who, the witch becomes the hissing lady. Or, when Christopher goes into the woods, he's wearing the little red hoodie. He's Little Red Riding Hood. I'm mixing Grimm and the Bible in this and my own kind of memories, because all of those things together with my own imagination is what led to the kid fears. Wow. And what is most remarkable about art, and I love this about art, I'll always love about it, is that doing, writing about fear at the end of the book, I don't fear it anymore.
Right. Speaking of fear, blasphemy and also superstition clearly weren't, you were just like able to put those to one side and write the book. I would have been like, am I going to get cursed for doing any of this?
No, but you know what? Yes. Okay. And some people feel that way, like, I've gotten some anger. I have, and I'm not going to pretend that I didn't. But as you know, because you've read the book, is that especially with the character, let's say like Mary Catherine McNeil, who is, and I wrote her, she's like the most Catholic girl ever, and I take it very seriously. I say, what happens to a young woman, in this case she's 17, who is raised Catholic, believes everything, she's a true believer, true person of faith, and her brain goes, okay, what happens if I sin, and before I can go to confession, I die? Does that mean I'm damned? And I take it very seriously and very literally. Mm-hmm. And so my thing was watching her go through her, watching her go through her journey through the entire thing to letting go of fear and only embracing the love, I think is very empowering. Mm. It's actually a very pro-faith. The whole thing is steeped in.
It felt very spiritual. It felt, it definitely felt that it was honoring all of that.
Thank you.
Which brings me also to forgiveness. Forgiveness seems like an incredibly important theme in the book, and I love how we come to understand the stories of the two children in the story who are bullies or who are bullying.
Yes.
And was just interested if you could say more about the importance of that as a...
in terms of bullying as themes, yes. In terms of understanding, see, here's the thing. One thing I've loved, I've done this in all of my work, and I'm really grateful to have a platform to even say this, is I feel like, you know, most people, as you know, we all have prejudice against each other. And I'm not talking racial or religious. I'm talking like, you see a person on the street, you make an instant snap judgment about them. We all do it. You know, it's part of our survival. I look at something a little bit deeper and I say, I love taking a character and you think, oh, this is the bully, and you dismiss them. Oh, this is the this. And by the end of this story, everybody is redeemed. By the end of the story, you understand, you may not agree with how they've coped with their, whatever their trauma is, or whatever it is they're going through, but at least you understand it. And what I'm trying to use this story for, it's why I was very honored to direct the movie of Wonder, or even with Perks Being a Wallflower going back, is you take these things that most people don't talk about, that most things get swept under the rug, and you really look them in the eye so that people can use them. Whether it's like a young woman who's like struggling with something in her own life, or it's a kid, or even if it's a parent that's trying to understand, oh, my kid's struggling, maybe something's going on there.
Yeah, 100%. And the compassion of that is amazing. And yeah, and your willingness to confront issues that, as you say, are uncomfortable, and people kind of prefer to kind of just sweep that one over this way, and it's easier just not to talk about any of this, which is incredible. I think when I wrote the review for your book, that was actually the thing that struck me the most, or that I wanted to say the most about your book, and why it felt really meaningful to me was this idea that there is nowhere and nothing and no one that cannot or is not worthy of redemption.
Yes.
And yeah, I loved how, there's something about when I finished the book, how it felt so complete and so deeply comforting. And
Yes.
I think that's the thing that carries me through all of your work, whether you're writing something or directing something, or it's a script. Actually, not many people know this, but Steve wrote the script for Beauty and the Beast for Disney that I was in. And there's just something so profoundly comforting to me about the things that you write, and you somehow managed to do it with a thriller. I don't know how, but you did.
Yeah, but you know, it's interesting that you mentioned Beauty and the Beast, because it's not so much as the thriller, it's really it's the coming of age, it's the story of childhood. All of these things, they all are linked. If you think about just, you know, because you're an English literature major, you think about children's literature, which usually gets something of a bad rap in a way. But, you know, not a bad rap, but in other words, on some level, it's not taken as seriously as something like, I don't think a child's author has ever won the Nobel Prize for literature. And you think about how many great ones there have been. The thing about all of these stories, whether it's a fairy tale, or a princess story like Beauty and the Beast, is there's the fantasy element. There are all these things, and it's really talking about children, how they see the world, how they relate to the world. Watching Macy and Theo, watching them invent things, it's all kind of part of that world to me.
Yeah, and why do you choose? You're right. That is totally the thread. Why do you choose children to explore such adult themes? What can they bring to it that, if you had an older protagonist, they wouldn't be able to do that?
Well, you know, I think on some level, because, you know, that story I told earlier when I was 12, you know, if my father had said anything else, if I'd taken it any other way, I would have a completely different life. It is such a formative, powerful time. And so I remember, let's talk about Beauty and the Beast for just a second. I remember writing the bit where, so, you know, you get the frumpy dress, and then what I loved was the idea of like, oh wow, Belle has been taken captive, this is horrible, and I'm saying to Macy, hey, if the Beast takes you captive, maybe turn the dress that they give you into a rope to get the hell out of the castle. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? As a metaphor for the whole thing. What I love is I love writing things that empower people, whether they're young adults and they're trying to figure out their identity, their you know, every number of issues that they're facing. If they're a small child and they're just trying to find some power in the world when they feel so powerless, or, you know, even in terms of like sometimes the adults who might have something that is unresolved for themselves, or they're worried about their own kids, right? Like I don't know, I feel like there's something about that time and those subjects that are forever fruitful. And I've never found a story about a grown-up that has been more powerful to me than stories about young people. I can't think of one. And I love a lot of them. I love Sideways and Matrix. There's so many good movies about grown people, or great books about grown people, but kind of give me To Kill a Mockingbird any day. You know what I mean?
Wow, yeah. That's a beautiful answer. What's amazing to me about you is that you seem to carry that knowledge within you, in the sense that you feel this incredible sense of responsibility, especially to young people that identify with the perks of being a wallflower. I personally know, because I've heard this anecdote or this story from so many young people, that perks of being a wallflower saved their life, helped them recover from a really difficult moment in their lives. But you don't seem to. You respect the importance of it, but you don't carry the weight of it. It just seems like a joy to you to.
Well, it's a joy to find the light within the darkness. It's an acknowledgement that there is no light without dark, right? And so if you've known some darkness, which I have, but the thing was, I was always looking for the bright side. It wasn't even discipline. So yeah, God knows. Look, trust me when I tell you. And I'm sure Liz is back there going like, yeah, he you know, he carries a little bit of weight. Like, you know what I mean? It isn't all light. But I will say, what I found is the most effective way to tell a story that deals with the things that are normally swept under the rug is through humor, it's through romance, it's through joy, it's through universal experience, it's through the celebration of life, not the ponderance of death. That's how you find it. So yeah, it's not like I'm choosing light. I mean, I'm an optimist by nature, but I also know that it's a great way to tell a story, and I'll always tell it that way.
Well, thank you for telling it that way. It's very yeah. It's been, as I've gone through. I mean, you met me when I was 19, I think, years old, when we worked together for Perks of Being a Wallflower.
I think it was I remember you just gotten your famous pixie cut.
Steve met me 2 days after I had shaved the back of my head.
Yes.
And we met in a hotel. And anyway, yeah, it's I don't know. All of your work has been so.
No, but you know what? Because it's a thing about being young, and it's about empathy, right? Okay. So you and I meet. So I walk in, like you were there. But just to share the story is, I walk in, and what I found most remarkable was again, you were there, and like and Denise was nearby, and so she was keeping an eye on you, and so we met at the restaurant, and it was really what I felt was, I could feel the eye of the hurricane that you grew up under. Do you know what I'm saying? That's what was interesting to me, and what I will never forget. And I don't even know if you know how important this was, and Liz can attest, because I took the train home to Ocean Grove, New Jersey, and she's like, "How did it go? You met?" I was like, "I'll tell you how it was." You said to me, I want the person that will keep us all there till 1 a.m. because they just have to get it right. And it was something about your pursuit of excellence and wanting that, and also just knowing that you grew up in the craziest. I can't even imagine what it was like to grow up in that circus. Just as a human being, as an artist, you were a champion. But this is a person. You know, sometimes you want to turn it off and be able to just walk down the street. You know what I mean? And sometimes you can't. I made a promise, like I was never gonna let you down. You know what I mean? Period. That this experience would be what you wanted it to be. Because, and also, you know how it is, and we all know this, we all relate to this, is how sometimes you'll fight a lot harder for somebody else's experience than for your own.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's what it was. I don't know. To me, it was that. And yeah, going back, yeah, I guess you were 19.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
Yeah. It was really, so
wow.
I had been on a number of director meetings at this point for different projects, and at this point I had kind of decided I was going to take time out, maybe indefinitely, from making films, and Steve came along with the wackiest 2 promises I've ever heard anyone make, and it was that not only were we going to make the most amazing film and the best possible rendition of The Perks of Being a Wallflower, but that I was going to have the best summer of my life doing it. I was like, who makes a promise like that? You can't control that. I thought it was absurd, but then there was also something about the conviction of this man and the way that he was able to describe every single frame of this film to me and exactly what it was going to look like, that I believed you. And then you bloody delivered. Yeah. I mean, I actually did. I actually had the summer of my life. Oh, and that was the second part of the promise. He was like, you're going to make some of the best friends that you're ever going to make. One of them was you. And then the others was Ezra Miller and Logan Lerman and the rest of that cast, and we did become incredibly close. But I think what endeared me the most and made me want to sign up to your project was that you cared about the experience of making it as much as you cared about the end product.
Oh yeah.
And not just that, I remember we were in a script meeting and you said, oh, I have to leave now because I have to go and speak to my wife and she's incredibly important to me. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I'd just been around all these executives and other directors who it just appeared as though they didn't sleep or have any kind of life other than whatever their project was. And if they did, they certainly spent all of their time trying to disguise it. And the fact that you openly were like, this film is incredibly important to me, but ultimately my relationship with her, the relationships I have, the experience that we have here as human beings are just as important, if not more important, than the end result. And that is a way of approaching, life, let alone art, was so beautiful to me. And and I've looked for people like you and people to work with like you ever since. And the truth is, there's very few that I can find that are that way. And
you're very sweet to say it, but I'll say that like what I learned it when I was this last month. I was on my book tour. It was like, it's funny, we don't. I think that the meaning of life really comes from the relationships that we have, and it's family. I know that I told you the story a little bit of Stuart Stern, who was my mentor. And he wrote Rebel Without a Cause and Sybil and all these amazing movies. And I remember when he passed away a few years ago, it was, his Emmy wasn't on the you know what I mean? It was like we all went to the hospital and we were all there for him, and it was the people that loved him. It's not all this other stuff. It's really about that thing. And that's why I just believe it because I have too much proof to the contrary. Or I have too much proof that the point of life is life. It's not the accolades and everything else. Yeah. Of all the things that I said about you, and they're all true and they're all amazing, and I'm so, the thing that impressed me the most is always, it's really just, you are a great friend, right? You do all these amazing things, but it's amazing to me is when you turn it off, and you're a person. Yeah. And you know that's, you're trying to help as well. And I don't know, it just, you've inspired me a great deal over the last 10 years, and I'm glad that I've done the same.
Thank you. It's just, and I'll stop after this, but this is the last thing I have to say, but it's just, in an industry so much.
We're both like this with compliments.
I know, right. But,
all right, I'm great, and I'm nice. All right, go ahead.
But seriously, in an industry where you're like, oh, maybe you do have to be an asshole to achieve anything, and maybe you do have to elbow people in the face, and maybe you do have to be competitive, and maybe you do have to be this way. It's just like, no, Steve Chbosky exists, and Steve Chbosky is the contrary to the rule. He is basically the nicer you are to people, and the more you cultivate and grow people's talent, and the more human you are, and just the more you show up as yourself, the better product, the better thing you're going to create, and the better artist you're going to be. You are basically against the rule that in order to be a successful artist, you have to be some sort of hermit asshole. You do not. This is really exciting and great news.
Right. That's my memoir title, by the way, Not a Hermit Asshole.
Not a hermit asshole.
I've been struggling to find my memoir title. Thank you so much.
I'm so thrilled.
I was going to call it Hermit Asshole, but now, I'm going to go the other way.
Good. I'm really glad I could yet again help you to... enough of my questions. Does anyone here have questions that they want to ask Steve? I'm sure there's probably someone who has something they want to ask Steve.
Was there a point writing Imaginary Friends where you got kind of just stuck? for a while.
Was there a point where I got stuck writing Imaginary Friend? Yes.
It took 10 years, obviously.
It was many times. There were many times. You can ask Liz, you can ask Kelsey Scott, you can ask Ava DeLire, you can ask basically everybody in my acknowledgments page, hey, were there moments when Steve got stuck? Oh, yeah. But what I found was I wasn't going to give up on it because I really thought I had something special with this idea. So yeah, that's the main thing is like, and I tell every young artist, every young writer, actor, you name it, those moments that like, you get down, you keep putting one foot in front of the other and it's going to happen for you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm curious, after like sitting with this story for 10 years, if you see yourself like going back into it or adapting it to the screen.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. Do I see myself going back into or adapting this for the screen? Both. You know, when I made The Perks of Being a Wallflower with Emma, making that movie, that entire project from the book all the way through the film was the greatest artistic experience I ever had. And I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved having it, my version in the book, and then I loved sharing it. I loved what she did with Sam. I loved how Ezra took Patrick. All the cast. It was just remarkable to watch them all kind of do their own autobiographies in a way. Even if they didn't necessarily live the characters' lives, what they brought to it. So the idea of like creating this thing that was, you know, to get the blueprint in my head on the page and then adapting it would be wonderful. And so that's really fun. And yes, there is, I can't tell you what the sequel to the book is because it will give away what the ending of the book is. But yeah, I have a sequel already and Emma referred to it earlier. And so I'm very excited to go back in. I really didn't know that I was kind of writing my version of The Lord of the Rings. I had no idea. I thought I was going to write like a fun little 250-page yarn that was mixed heart and horror for my wife to love. And next thing I know, 10 years later, I got a doorstop that I love, and there will be more. Yeah, you were.
I just wanted to follow on from that gentleman's question of when, in those times where you did feel stuck, what allowed you to stay resilient and keep going?
What allowed me to stay resilient and keep going in the moments I was stuck was really, it changed all the time. Sometimes it was my kids or certainly my wife, and also because, you know, I want them to read it someday. And if I don't finish it, no one can read it. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's that simple. It's not even like, oh, wow, if I don't finish this book, 5 years are down the drain or anything like that. I take time very seriously. We only have so much of it. I'm thinking of that fact more and more every day. You know, sometimes you write a book or you make a movie because you want to be the person that the first person that reads or sees it. You know, I was like, I'm the first person that got to read Imaginary Friend. It was here, and if you believe as I do that like so much of this is inspired, so much of this is out there, kind of in the ether, and I don't know why The Boy with the Clouds and this title came to me as opposed to somebody else, but I'm really glad the book exists. And so I get to read it first, and then if I feel it's up to snuff, then I get to publish it and then share it with other people. That's when it gets really, really fun, because I genuinely believe in empowering the reader and other things, but it's not so much like I'm this preacher and this is the message. It's more of like, because that to me implies on some level that there's some kind of hierarchy, when it's not. You go, look, if over the years, the last 20 years, people come up to me, as Emma's referred to, and they talk about what Perks has meant to them as a movie or as a book. I was just on tour, and I had 4 people, as you referenced, who literally looked me in the eye and said, yeah, I didn't kill myself because of your, actually, in this case, movie, which is really remarkable. And so let's just take that as the most extreme version of this thing that I believe, which is, if I wrote something many years ago, whether it's Imaginary Friend or Perks or whatever, and I felt this thing, if someone comes to me and says, wow, it's like you really understood how I felt, right? So if I don't believe in the hierarchy, which I don't, what it means is, it's not like writers up here and readers down here. We're here. And the thing is that it's the feeling. Because if someone says, you understand how I felt, I get to say back to them, well, that means that you understand how I felt. And now we have communion. We have connection. It's the connection always. The dance between artist and audience is forever. That's what I'm always chasing. Yes?
Having kids, because I know your kids, so there were moments in Christopher that I saw from your daughter that made me cry. So are there things, was it a different experience writing young people now that you have kids, especially because you were writing a lot of kids in this book?
Yes. Well, I have to say, you know, I'm really glad I made the Perks of Being a Wallflower movie before I had children, because I think I was willing to go a little bit deal with some things that might be a little tougher now. But in terms of imaginary friend, I started writing that book, and the person I related to the most was Christopher. And by the end of the book, the person I related to the most was his mother. It went from Christopher to Kate really quickly. Because yes, it's like, as any parent knows, if your child is struggling in any way with any set of whatever the issue might be, in some cases something fairly harrowing. Like when Theo just took off on us at SeaWorld for like 20 minutes and you couldn't find him. Like, I wouldn't wish that feeling on anybody. And so it all kind of found its way into the DNA of the book, for sure.
No, my question got answered twice.
Wow. Really?
I was gonna ask, did you use your kids as inspiration for some of the parts of the book? And then I was also gonna ask,
Great question.
whatever he asked.
About making it into a movie.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you see yourself in the future making a movie?
You're tapped into the collective unconscious, my friend. You are just
so
really
tapped.
plugged in.
Well done, young man. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, follow up.
What was the original ending that Emma so wisely told you not to do?
Oh.
I can't. Well, I can't, and I'll tell you why. It kind of gives a couple things away that I ended up figuring out. No, not sequel. Although, yeah, part of it actually. You know what it was? It was. See, okay. I'll share this. I'm gonna talk, because I don't want to give one away of Imaginary Friend. So I'll talk about it in terms of perks. When I wrote The Perks of Being a Wallflower, when I first started it way back in college, it was, the kid was angry and it was first person. It was very angry and very kind of, edgy and blah, blah, blah. And then on page 72, I'll never forget, I wrote, well, I guess that's one of the perks of being a wallflower. And I spent 72 pages to get 6 words. And I scrapped the 72 pages instantly because I realized that the perks of being a wallflower was what I was always searching for the whole time. That every time I try to be angry or edgy or like, scandalous or whatever I try to be, I'm just not good at it. You know what I mean? Every time I try to go dark, and not like dealing with dark subjects, which I do, but like do it like with an edge. I'm just me, and it doesn't work ever. And so my original ending, I think she will attest, was just like, and then this dark thing happens, and she's like, huh. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I go from the edge of the seat to just off the cliff, like that, instantly. So yeah, that's all I can tell you. Everything else would give stuff away.
So this is going to be my last, I'm really throwing you guys a gem here by asking this question because basically, well, I'm about to appear in Greta Gerwig wrote the script and directed Little Women.
Which I've heard is incredible. Well done.
It's coming out on Christmas Day. Quick film plug. No, but seriously, so a big part of my character Meg's story is figuring out what life path she wants, and specifically which man is the right man. That's her specific story. The other sisters have other stories, but that's Meg's story. And over the last 10 years, you've given me the best dating advice I've ever had from anyone. Wow. Consistently. A big portion of our conversations is me just with my hands.
By the way, notice that the overlap of the 10 years is after I got married. So once I got married to Liz and I was like, oh, it's this, then I could give good dating advice. Before that, rubbish. Go ahead.
You gave me. So because I've always felt this, because this is what our dinners look like, right, with Steve, is I'm scribbling on some corner of a napkin somewhere with a pen because I'm like, this is gold. And a lot of it was usually, I love you, kid, but you're kind of messing this bit up, and I'm just going to give it to you straight. And so for everyone else who should get to enjoy and / prosper from your incredible advice,
okay,
just give me the summary of what you've been telling me for the last 10 years.
Okay.
Key advice.
Wow, this is like
I'm so sorry.
This is on the spot. Okay.
I know. I'm so sorry, but you're so good at this.
I have to top 3 it. Okay.
Okay.
Number one. Absolutely number 1. Which is, and I'm going to say, I usually, because I usually give you advice about to young women, but this can apply to anybody, which is, don't fit your life to your man, fit your man to your life.
Right, or woman.
Or woman.
General. Don't try and find someone.
Basically, what happens when you're young is, and I found this more in younger people than older people, is when you're younger, you're like, oh, he's really great looking, or she's great, or whatever, and you start to pretend that you like hiking, and You know what I mean? You start like, you're right. You start like lying all the time because you're really into this person, right? Yeah, exactly. I hate hiking. Hate it.
I hate it too.
Thank you.
I hate hiking.
I love Liz. I tried hiking with her once. I was like, babe, I love you. I can't. Don't make me do this again. Please, I beg you. So the thing is that what happens is trying new things inspired by somebody else, that's awesome. But like, just don't change because like, oh, I have to make this fit this. That's right. There it is.
It's bad.
Basically,
it's a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's number one.
So just be radically, brutally honest about who you are and what your
Yes,
truths are.
because if your life, if like, I love to do this and that and this and this and this and this and that, and you meet a person that loves to do all the same things or at least adjacent enough, and you suddenly realize, oh, I'm not lying. I'm not pretending I'm into something I'm not. I'm really myself. This is the life I'm pursuing. This is what this is what I want artistically. And he fits all of that. Well, he's way better than the person that you're twisting yourself into a pretzel to
trying to figure out how to become.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That would be
Amazing.
number one.
Okay. So spend as much time as possible trying to figure out who you are and what you like and what your truths are.
And what will make you happy.
And what will make you happy. Mm-hmm. And know those things super well.
Yes.
And then seek someone that likes those things and who you are.
And understand,
also.
yes, 100%, and understand that you don't have to compromise those things for love. We have this belief sometimes, especially when we're young, oh, I can't just have it all. Well, of course you can.
Yeah, you can have your cake and eat it. This is the best thing Steve's been telling me for years. He's like, no, you can have all of that and the rest of it. I'm like, really?
Exactly.
And you're like, yes.
Yeah, you don't have to suffer. You can suffer for your art if you want to, and we do a little bit. Don't suffer for love.
This was genius. This was profoundly
good.
Profound for me.
I'm glad it was helpful.
Suffering and compromise not necessary.
Yes.
You can have it all.
And the other thing, yeah, boom. And then the other thing was, I would say, is that I believe, and this is what really, with Liz, it was the game changer, was like, when you're young, I think people think that love leads to marriage. And yes, love is part of marriage, and a very, very important part. Respect is as important, if not more important than love, in this kind of fundamental way, because there are moments when you've had 3 hours of sleep, you have, if you fundamentally respect each other, it's a great, great bedrock, right? Yeah. So yeah, and I think that when you're younger, you don't covet it as much, and I think it's critical. I don't have a third. What's a third? Here's a third. And I don't even know if I've ever said this to you. What I found is, and this has now been married 9 years, having known Liz for 12, is it's the quiet as much as the talking. It's like there's so much that we live our lives like that we feel like, when you're young, it's like, oh, and you go out and you do crazy things, you stay out all night, you do all this stuff, and you think that pace of life is always, and it's not. You know what I mean? As you get older, I'm 49 now, I'll be 50 in January, that as you get older, it's like, you start to like, no, it's the stuff that sometimes isn't said is as important as the stuff that is. It's like sometimes, I swear to God, if Liz and I can have like a half an hour to watch Netflix at the end of the night, it's like heaven. I mean, you know what I mean? That's like, it used to be like all night diners and like chain smoking and all this other stuff when I was younger. Now it's like that, just like the peace of life. You know what I mean? Peace, like our peace beats anyone's fight.
That's gorgeous. That's so lovely.
There you go.
And I guess also just to add on that, it's like, it's the things that you each do that aren't said.
Yes. Yes, and I will say, like, I wrote the line in The Person We Wallflower, we accept the love we think we deserve. That was my personal, I wrote that line when I was 26, and it took me a long time to actually apply it to my life. So it's not like it happens, oh, I thought of a slogan and, oh, it's all fixed. No, you have to apply it and you have to figure it out and you have to you have to meet the right person.
Right. And I guess you can also just apply that to people, friendships, parents, across every relationship you have in your life. Yourself.
Yeah, we accept the love from ourselves that we think we deserve. Yes. From our friends, from really everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's the best. He really is the best.
So can I share you my surprise?
Yeah.
You don't even know. You don't
what
even
is
know
about
this.
To happen?
Yeah, here we go.
What is
I want to share this with you because this is really cool, and I'll tell you why. Because as I said, I buried the lead a little bit earlier where, I was just out on the road with an imaginary friend for a month, and everywhere I went, I mean, the people that came up to me, like I've received letters over the years, I've ran into people, of course, but this was concentrated every night, here's the line of people, and here are the book signing, and the people that told me these things. so many people about this movie that we made. So many. It's like that led it, like it took 11 years to get to 1 million copies, and now we're at 5. It's because of the movie, and it's because of you. Because as you and I talked about, and you know it's true, basically you going all around Hollywood and saying, make this movie, I want to make this movie, is what got the movie made. So basically, you putting putting all of that behind this project literally saved lives. Because if we don't make it, they don't see it, right? So I wanted to share this with you to say thank you. You know what I mean? So here, let me just get up just for a second. I'm going to take this. There you go.
Goodness.
So,
by the way, I did have to do that. So crazy. So coming out of Harry Potter, all these studio heads were like, well, what do you want to do? And I just kept saying, I don't want to do anything. The only thing I want to do is I want someone to fund the making of this book called The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yes.
And then finally,
yeah, and Eric Feig said, okay.
Eric Feig said, all right.
God bless him. So anyway, you've never heard me say these words. So as you all know, because it was said 20 years ago, I published The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and my publishers said after 20 years, like, did I want to do like an anniversary edition? And I said yes. The thing was with the anniversary edition, I didn't want to just like add a couple of questions to the back at the book guide and call it, slap a sticker on it and call it something new when it's not. What I wanted to do was actually use the 20 years later. And I want to share this with you and say thank you. So I wrote a new letter from Charlie's point of view. So for 20 years, it's ended. The book has ended, and I will believe the same about you. Love always, Charlie. And now, if you turn the page, there's an afterword. Now, I want to say really quick, that changed in the book. Here's the other thing that changed in the book. It used to say, for my family. Now it says, for my family then, for my family now. For Liz Macy and Theo Chbosky always. So it is for my beautiful wife and kids. So here we go. Here's the new letter. Here's the afterword. It says, September 18th, 2012. September 18th is my anniversary. That is a shout out for you, Liz. September 18th, it's also the day I met her, which was amazing. September 18th, 2012, dear friend. I haven't sent you a letter. I haven't sent a letter to you for 20 years. I don't even know if this is still the right place to send it. But I'm going to send it anyway and hope that you find it. It would mean the world to me if you found it, because I want to say thank you. Years ago, there was a very sad kid who needed a whole lot of help, and writing to you is the beginning of that help. Whatever I've learned as an adult, I've never forgotten what it was like to be that kid, what it was like to feel like no one could understand these feelings because I couldn't understand them myself. I've never forgotten feeling sad or crazy or depressed or outside of my own self and own body. And on the great days, I have never forgotten what it was like to go on those drives with those songs, with those beautiful people whom I still call friends. That kid wrote some letters and sent them out into the world to a stranger he had heard about, and then something amazing happened. You wrote back. I know I didn't enclose my real name or address, but somehow my letters were shared. People passed them around. The way Patrick's poem was, Xeroxed and traded, whispered like a secret password. However it happened, it happened. You read my letters, and then some of you wrote back. You sent letters to random addresses. Some of them were forwarded along to me. Maybe some of them weren't. I don't know if I got all of them, but I got enough of your letters to realize something extraordinary. And if you could see the boxes and boxes of letters that I've received for the last 20 years, you would know what I know once and for all, forever and always. You are not alone. Understand, friend, there are millions of us, millions of people who struggle with and overcome all sorts of problems. You would be shocked to know how many people understand exactly what you are going through. That doesn't mean that what you're going through is somehow less meaningful, special, unique. On the contrary, it means that what you're going through is more. It is important. It deserves to be seen, spoken of, and understood. It is 20 years now, 20 years of receiving your letters, and I can't tell you how many times they've saved me that day, or made me cry, or laugh, or believe, or hope that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I can't tell you what it's like to read a letter from the young woman who was going to kill herself. Read my letters and decided not to. And she's now in her 30s. She's happily married. She has children. The dark time is over for her, just like it will pass for you. So if these words make sense, if you have known these stories yourself, if you have experienced or witnessed abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, if you have struggled with mental illness of any kind or love someone who does, if you are surrounded by those who call what you are different instead of beautiful, if your mind or body has cried out for peace and acknowledgement and understanding, just know you are part of an infinite family, the people who have been through terrible things and survived them. If you're reading these words, you won today. You are here. You are alive. You have options. You can wait out a bad situation, move on, fight back, get out, break up, call, ask her or him out, write that book, write that song, listen to the music, take the drive, take the chance, and live. Whatever strategy you choose, you win. There are so many more of us than there will ever be of them, and we can find each other, and we can help each other, and we can talk to each other, and we can build great lives. Happiness is not this thing for other people. It is for you. It is for me. It is for all of us. We all get an ending. Whether or not it's happy is up to us. That is my long way of saying thank you, dear friend. 20 years ago, a young man wrote some letters. You wrote him back, and a grown man was inspired to write again. So just in case this ends up being my last letter, I want to answer one question, the question I've been asked the most since your letters found their way to me. Whatever happened to Charlie? And I can tell you what happened to Charlie in 3 words. He made it, and so will you. Love always, Charlie.
Thank you so much for reading that.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing it.
You're welcome.
It's like, as you said, it's like getting a letter you didn't know you were going to get from beyond, from another place.
Yeah, and what's so amazing,
the
10 years
past or the future, or...
Thank you. 10 years later, you made it too. Look at you. Amazing. Bravo.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for doing this with me. Your book is a masterpiece. And
thank you very much.
I'm so proud of you, and thank you for letting me
Thank you
interview
so much. This is great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have such a lovely
Thanks,
night.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. That's wonderful.